I'm afraid of losing my freedom.
What makes a high-value man? What makes a high-value woman?
Freedom comes from the simplicity of service when you actually evolve beyond the prince life.
I want to have the ability to know where that's coming from and communicate this in a healthy way.
Even an unconscious dad has more depth than a super conscious man that has no responsibility.
Do you think that men and women can just be friends? What is going on, Savages? And welcome back to the Business Savage podcast. I have another beautiful guest interview for y'all today. This one is sure to awaken a lot of you men. Listen up. This one is specifically for you. Today, I have with me a friend that I've connected with on Instagram. I have been captivated by his content personally, and also really excited to bring this content to y'all on the show. So today I have with me Max Trombly. Welcome, Max, to the show.
Hello. Happy to be here.
Max is a dedicated embodied life, love, and relationship coach from vibrant, I'm going to say Nolans, because I feel like that's how you're supposed to say it. Louisiana. He is committed to guiding individuals towards a brighter, empowered future. As a devoted husband and the proud father of two, his mission is to elevate our potential and empower us to live with purpose, passion, and depth. Max, a catalyst in transformational coaching, helps clients find clarity and self-leadership, especially during their challenging moments. With a track record of success stories, he aids people in discovering purpose, reigniting intimacy, and navigating the complexities of modern dating. Hello.
Yeah.
His expertise comes from a decade of leading transformational growth organizations, uniquely equipping them to facilitate profound self-leadership and transformations. Max's own journey with divorce to deep conscious love positions him as a compassionate guide for those navigating similar challenges. Lastly, his goal is to help individuals cultivate deep love through new beliefs, self-responsibility, that is the key, and new embodied reality and profound awareness. Max, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I'm super excited to have you. This is going to be a juicy conversation. So let's start with this. One of the things that we connected on, so I had reached out to you because I was resonating very strongly with your content personally, but also for you. And so one of the things that you had said right at the beginning that I think really hooked me, personally, there was one of your reels that you talked about you honoring your the inner child in your wife. Yeah. And so how every time, you're heading into certain situations or conflict with her, one of the pieces that you bring in is understanding her inner child and having compassion and speaking to her inner child, and wanting to acknowledge and heal some inner wounds and things that are coming up for her through your expression.
Yeah.
And so I would love to start with, I don't want to dive too deep into inner child work because I feel like there's a bigger piece.
No, we don't have to. Yeah.
Yeah. I would love to talk a little bit about how important it is when we are cultivating healthy relationships, not just intimate, but friendships, business relationships, to recognize their track record, recognize some wounds that they may have, the places that they have been, the lens that they're looking at life through. How important is that for you to remove your ego and have the ability to acknowledge their inner child and what they may be experiencing?
Yeah, it's everything. And let me just start. So you're the Business Savage podcast. And since this is business oriented, I would guess that many of your listeners at some point, probably at the beginning of their business journey, read Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And when you get into the meat of that book, the single most important thing is that when you're approaching sales, you don't just walk into a space and say, this is what I've got. You walk into a space and say, what's going on for you? And the reason you do that is because you immediately create a connection of more depth than just being a salesperson. And it's interesting because the reason I bring this up is that that's also emotional intelligence. Like, what is the landscape of the environment I'm in and what needs to happen for us to have a deeper connection in this space? That is the foundation of everything when we have human relationships. So in my relationship, so specifically the reel that you're talking about, what I said was, one of the intentions I have in my relationship is to serve my wife at a deep kind of abandonment wound that she has from her childhood, and to be sort of a healing being in that space by just affirming over and over again, like, I'm here, I've got us, I've got you, I love you, I choose you. And by being the embodiment of that, so it's not just words, it's also how I show up in my relationship. What I do is through repetition, over and over and over, year after year after year, it chips away at the part of her that has fear around losing the person that she's in relationship with. And that's sort of how it works. And I'm not coming at this from a savior lens. I'm coming at this from the lens of, I've got a wife. She's got some tender spots, as do I. And we have both chosen to show up in ways in our relationship where we serve those tender spots into a softening, into a relaxing. And, what the impact is in relationship is that, triggers that pop up because of these wounds, they get less and less loud. And eventually they're almost non-existent. Now, they never go away fully, but what is happening is, my wife and I have created conditions in which when we have conflicts or there's energy of, discord or just difficulty in our relationship, we're less likely to eject fully into these wound spaces and really just stay on, okay, what's alive for us right here? And what do we need to do to come back to homeostasis within relationship or love, And that's really the root of it. And we don't have to go into it any further, but yeah, one of my deepest intentions is just to be a home for my wife, someone that she can come home to and just feel like, whatever goes on in life, it's okay because I've got her and she's got me.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I feel like as you were sharing that, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs comes up for me with one of our, needs, basic needs is the sense of safety, right?
Exactly.
The sense of love and belonging, but also that sense of safety. This is a really great segue. I have two segues. The first one that I would love to talk about, because I know that you talk about it in a untraditional, unconventional way, which I think is going to be really powerful and something I would love to hear about. I find, so let's say this, I have moved to Austin from Toronto. One of the reasons that I moved here was because I find it's a very awakened, very conscious community generally. Yeah. And so I have found my last year of my life, I spent very intentionally building relationships predominantly with women. I wanted strong female women in my circle. I have found a lot of very conscious, awake, strong women who have done a lot of work on themselves, who are very aware and continuously growing. I find it's more difficult to find those men. Yeah. I find a lot of those men, and I think that's one of the reasons why women are quote unquote settling, are stuck in those Peter Pan syndrome, those boys have turned into quote unquote men, conscious men, who have the awareness of what you just shared. Because I think that all of them do have that desire of deep love, but they're in their own way. Yeah. What do you have to say, and I know it's a deep one and a big one, around turning a boy or helping a boy become a conscious, awakened man?
Yeah, it is a big one. And so, in the conscious men's community, what we see a lot of is a lot of kind of late stage princes. So men who are still stuck in the prince mode, they're still like, I'm developing my life, I'm creating my life. And what they're not doing is being shepherded toward their kingship. And I don't mean to use vague terms, but let me get really clear what this means. Within the initiatory stages of a man's life, which we've completely lost in Western society, the stage one is just being a child and it's social learning, emotional learning, and just kind of learning like how to work as a human among humans. To go from childhood to manhood, there's this initiatory moment that happens between 10 and 13 for most men and historically globally, where you take these boys out of their villages and away from the women and you go, okay, here's what your responsibilities are. And so from let's call it 12 to 22, as a young man, you're developing your skills, your capacity, your capability, you're becoming a relevant member of society, and you're kind of finding your lane of like, this is what I'm here to do, and this is what I'm here to create. What we have now is we have men that are stuck in that initiatory moment, and there's nobody that's holding these men to recognize that that's not the end. The next moment is a deeper moment. And traditionally, what it is joining forces with a feminine being, creating a family. And now that you have kids, you immediately initiate into what is kingship if you do it consciously. And what that means is that you're now in charge of a group. You have a bunch of people you're serving. And so in the lack of this happening, what we have is we have all these men that are in their 30s and even 40s who are still stuck in this thing where they're like, I'm creating this thing, I'm doing this thing, and they're resisting deepening their lives. And it's really not just about having kids, but it also kind of is. The thing is, once you have children, you are forced to be like, okay, I am now in charge of the health and well-being of other people. And it forces the cards in a way in that initiation. And if you're not going to do the kid path, the thing is, when we take on responsibility that's external to to ourselves, whether it's employees or whether it's, serving the community, the real important piece here is that I don't have a choice. I have to serve my family because my family needs my leadership. It needs my service. If we're positioning ourselves in life where we have choices and we don't have to serve anything, we will never grow into the bigness of potential that is what's here for us as men. So to really answer your question, what it is, and I see it all across the men's workspace, like really good conscious men who are resisting deepening their lives. They're just constantly on the self path. Me, like, I'm going to go do this, I'm going to go do that. And like, they might be in relationships, but they're not taking those relationships deeper because they're afraid of, what I often hear is, I'm afraid of losing my freedom. And what men don't realize is that I have more freedom than I've ever had in my life. I know exactly what my life's for. I know exactly what I'm doing. I don't have the confusion of all the choices to make. I have a wife to serve, kids to serve. I have a company to build, and that's it. It's very simple. Like, freedom comes from the simplicity of service when you actually evolve beyond the prince life. And so does that help? I mean, do you get a sense of what I'm kind of drawing up here? And so what you have as a woman is you're like meeting these men, and what they're doing is they're actually resisting you, because to deepen with you means to move into an initiatory phase that they're scared of. And nobody's holding these men into that moment. I have some like men that are in leadership in men's work. I've had conversations even with them and just been like, dude, this is where you're at. This is the thing that you're struggling with. And you're like literally kicking and screaming, like not committing to this woman because the reason is you're scared of what comes next. She wants kids, and you know that if you commit, like, boom, like you've got to walk that path. And it's not just about kids, but really that is the thing historically that has initiated us deeper into life, is all of a sudden we have a responsibility that's external to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense?
Yeah. And it's powerful. I know this is a much conversation, and I really urge people that are like even a little bit interested to reach out and connect with you. Like,
sure.
It's such a powerful conversation. And I think not just men, but also women. Sometimes and of course I have so much work left to do, but I've done more than I think most. Yeah. And so and I'm sure you see this, you kind of just want to like shake them, and you're like, just like, you're so close. Like, you're so close.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
But it's a big difference. The difference between a man who's like in this prince phase, like age 38 to 42, and a man who's in their kind of more king element is like, it's the difference between a freshman in high school, like on day one, the way they walk into a room, or someone that has like a year of residency at a medical facility. Like, the difference is night and day. You know what I mean? And that is the thing that, you know, even an unconscious dad has more depth than a super conscious man that has no responsibility.
Yeah. The thought of being in an unconscious relationship, I think, is one of my biggest fears.
Yeah.
Probably one of the things that holds me back. I would love to switch gears for a second and talk a little bit more about the feminine, traditional feminine, so women. Yeah. And what I mean by this, and I'm going to bring in a little bit of my story. Everyone that's listening to the show knows, and you don't. I grew up a hockey player, competitive hockey player, boys hockey. I was told I was the son my dad never had. I'm very masculine energy my entire life. And so you can only imagine the number one thing I've heard is, you're intimidating. He's too much. I can't keep up with that. Intimidating, right? And still to this, I get that a lot. And removing me from that lens, I know that women, when we talk about so I think there's 3 types of women, and I'd love your thoughts on this. I think there is the woman who right now is in this place where she's like, I need a man. Why does nobody love me? I just want to have someone to hold me. And like, I need. What's wrong with me? Why does no one like me? Why can't I find my person? Yeah. Then we have a woman who's like her boss babe energy, who's like, I don't need a man. I can do this by myself. I got this. And she's, you know, pushing away what she actually truly deeply desires by this shield. Yeah. And then we have the woman who's like, I would love an equal partner and intimacy and relationship, but I'm good. Like, I'm working on myself, but also waiting for that right conscious relationship. The reason that I bring this up is because when we talk about masculine and feminine energy, it took a lot of work on my part to remove that shield, to remove that armor of protecting myself, to allow my feminine to come in and to emerge, and to allow a man to hold that space of providing that safety that you're talking about, allow him to sell into that space. And so any thoughts that you have that come up around, you know, the need for a woman to surrender, to allow him to step into his role, to allow him to fill those shoes of her feeling safe and supported, but he can't do that if she's already up here fighting for the control.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that is the thing about relationships, is that there's this sort of balance and there's a give and take. And if women come into a relationship and they're unwilling to let down the shield, there's no space for the man to like really come into his part of the relationship. Does that make sense? You know, my wife comes from a long lineage of strong women. And her mom is really fiercely strong and capable. And there's kind of, I wouldn't say they're super masculine, but they're like, we can handle, like her mom raised her whole family of 3 pretty much by herself. And And so my wife is very capable. Like she can handle everything. And, when we came together, I really said like, listen, I want a relationship in which we're co-creating this. I also want a relationship where you feel safe and where you feel like you can express yourself like freely as you, whatever that looks like. And naturally over the 6-something years that we've been together, she has kind of softened a little bit and made space for my leadership. And by doing that, she's been able to relax everything. Like instead of holding everything and constantly like being attuned to like, what do the kids need? What do I need? What does everything need? Like, is everything okay? She can go, okay, he's got it. Everything's okay. And she can like really relax into what she's here to create as a feminine being, really. And, I think one thing that I'll say, there was this piece around early on in your share, you said, like, I forget exactly how you worded it, but it was something around, it was when men say you're intimidating. Yeah. Okay. So the thing about men saying you're intimidating, that's great information. If any man ever says that to you, he doesn't have the capacity or the ability to hold you. And so great, let him go. Let him go immediately. There's no business with you being with somebody that says that. The thing is, a man who has a real, like a solid masculine essence and way of being, he's not even going to register your energy as intimidating. He's just going to be like, cool, you're awesome. Like that's not going to be a thing he notices. And so there's two parts to this. One is that, you're going to want to try to find and magnetize men who are capable. And I'll talk more about that in a second. But the second thing is also recognizing, is there an energy you're holding that's actually you just blocking people? And that's a little more complex. Like if you're just like, if you have a historical fear of men not being able to hold you, do you actually amplify the part of you that's taking up space? You know what I mean? So like on dates, I was talking to a client recently and I was like, she was saying that she really loves to like invite the man into conversation and like hold space for his stuff. And I was like, yeah, that's nice. Do you realize that you're controlling the whole conversation? And actually you're not giving him any space to kind of lead you in the conversation. And by doing this, you're actually in a masculine role in the conversation, thinking you're doing a feminine thing of holding space. And she was like, holy shit. And as we drilled into it, what happened was she realized her whole life, she fills the room with her energy to create safety. She fills her room with her bigness to create safety. Because if she's in control, no one can take control away from her. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's the thing. It's like, am I intimidating because I'm actually taking up all the space and I'm not letting him have an inch? Or am I intimidating because I'm choosing men that just can't hold me? That's one part. Now, the capable man thing is really interesting. I often joke, and I've said this on almost every podcast, but if you want a capable man, find a guy that has like a farm with 300 cows. And the reason I say that is because if you have a guy that has the discipline to get up every day, take care of his herd of animals and everything's safe and okay, that's a man who has the ability to hold big things, And it's so funny. Like I was coaching a woman a couple of years ago, and she had a history of like the habitual relationships that weren't functioning. They were exciting, but they didn't, bring her into depth. And I literally said, find a farmer. And she did. She was in like Oklahoma. And she found a guy who's a soil scientist and he spends a lot of time in the dirt. And she's now been with him. Like this is the longest relationship she's ever had. She's been with him for like 3 years. And it's like a deeply, like, it's just allowing her to, release the part of her that's not being fed in love. And she can just be in love and do her life. And she's a powerful boss. She has a huge company. And so does he. And so, it's kind of interesting.
It's super interesting.
Yeah.
The more that I've learned the energy dynamics and like, and that battle almost for like the control that I find that a woman in their masculine. I work with a lot of female business owners. A lot of female business owners are strongly in our masculine. We fear. I saw my mother lose her power to my, and so I grew up being like, no, like I'm never going to let that happen. So it's a very interesting conversation. I hear it both ways, men and women, using this term. I don't know if it's just a term that we're hearing all the time lately, high value man, high value woman. I'm hearing it all the time. What makes a high value man? What makes a high value woman? I feel like when we hear that, it makes people feel like I'm not enough. Like, am I a high value man? Like, am I going to be seen the way that this woman wants me to be seen? What are some things, and this is probably a loaded question, maybe some initial steps for the man who is listening to this, who hears, I want to be a high value man, or for the woman who's listening to this and thinks, I want to be a high value woman.
Yeah.
What are the first steps that they can take to becoming that? I don't even define it because I think it's defined differently for everyone.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. In any circumstance in life, to be a high value man or woman, you have to know what the playing field of that circumstance is. And so if we're talking about relationships, to be a high value man, you have to be a man who's on purpose and he knows what he's doing with his life so that he's trustable. And like, okay, I don't have to mother this guy. The second thing is you have to be a man who's capable with his emotions and his emotional landscape. So it doesn't mean he's emotional. It just means he has access to feeling his emotions. He knows what's going on when they arise, and he knows how to manage them in a way that's healthy and not toxic. Toxic expression is just the unmitigated expression of emotions. So, oh, I'm feeling a certain way. Here's what's up. What do we need to do? Like having a good map of understanding the self, And I think the last thing, a high value man is a man that has an idea where he's going in life so that when you meet him, you're like, okay, I know how to read this guy. I know who he is. I know what he's doing. I know what he's capable of. And I can trust that when I join with him. Does that make sense?
Yes. Self-awareness, self-actualization, like integral component to all of this.
Yeah, it's the number one.
Literally.
Yeah.
Something that I still every day learn more about. And I'm like, ooh, where did that like little fiery emotion just come from? Or right.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, I wish I could turn that switch off and I could just not be so aware. How does somebody start? How does somebody who is like, well, I want to be really self-aware. I want to be triggered by something. I want to have the ability to, instead of react, I want to have the ability to take a breath and respond. I want to have the ability to know where that's coming from and communicate this in a healthy way. Where do they start?
Yeah. It's a lot more simple than people. I mean, here's the thing. When I started just by meditating. And through meditation, I realized how alive my mind was. And I was like, wow. And what I often hear is people go, well, I tried to meditate and I can't stop thinking. And it's like, well, that's your problem. You can't get out of your relationship to life. And you have to. The thing is, to be self-aware, you have to be self-aware. And if people can't stop the just train that is their energy, including their thoughts, their feelings, their everything, then we can't be self-aware. So I started by meditating and just tracking thoughts and recognizing, okay, that's like a planning thought. It's related to anxiety. That's like a fear thought. That's also related. Like I just started tracking the kind of thoughts I was having, and I did a meditation practice. I mean, I still do. I'm 10 years into it, but that first year I was in a really difficult situation. It was a year before I filed for divorce, so I was in a really wild moment. But through meditation, I started to really clear the space between thoughts, and then from that spaciousness, I got to go, okay, what am I feeling? Feeling heaviness in my heart, my shoulders. So it's really funny, but self-awareness is actually just recognize, like, what are you doing in your mind and your body? That's it. It's number one. And what that looks like for me now, I'm a pretty advanced practitioner of this after this amount of time, and I teach it, and I run multiple practices a day on calls, so I'm pretty much always in practice. It's Monday. Today is Monday. So for your listeners, I got home from a camping weekend with my wife and kids. I woke up, got my kid off to school, went and worked out with my trainer. After my trainer and on the way to this podcast recording, I was like, okay, where am I at? I just noticed I'm feeling crunchy. I'm feeling like life is just like running. And I'm like, oh, where am I? Like, that kind of like, like life's fucked. And I just recognized, okay, what can I do to shift this? And I have a number of practices that I can do to come back to center and come back to presence. One of them is breath and just laying on the floor and kind of cracking open the body. Cold water is another one that I use. And so I just did a couple practices in the half hour before our call just to really soften my body and tap back into like, who am I? What am I here to create? What is my intention for this podcast? And by the time we got on the call, I was just completely relaxed. And what really matters here is I recognized 45 minutes before we started that I was crunchy, that I was moving a little quickly, that my mind was kind of racing. And I was like, that's not the circumstance I want to be in 45 minutes. So what do I need to do to shift it so I can show up here beautifully, like with slowness and awareness? And that's the same practice I use in my relationship. That's the same practice I use in my business leadership. It's the same practice I use in my fatherhood. Like, where am I at? What am I noticing in my body and my energy? And what do I need to do to shift it so I can be the best leader for the moment coming up? Does that make sense?
Yes. I'm really, I have a lot of gratitude that you just brought that up, because it's one of the things that I preach and talk about is somatic and embodiment.
It's all somatic.
And how it all starts within you, and there's the cue, and everything you need is within you.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Mm-hmm. And so one of the pieces that you just shared, and I'll just kind of add to this from my personal perspective, is I believe that it starts with curiosity.
Yeah.
And so I believe it starts with being curious enough to say like, what's happening right now? And where did that just come from? Mm-hmm. And out of the mind and getting into the heart. I ask the question often, what would love do? So in any situation where I'm ready to I'm mad at a client, I'm mad at my mom, I'm mad at my roommate, I'm mad at whatever it is, my partner. And I can ask myself, what would love do?
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Get into my heart. And then there's a number of things to that. So that we're not reacting.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
I used to be the queen of reacting, and you snap,
Yeah.
and then you're like, that was an ugly side of me that just came out. Where did that come from?
Yeah.
Curious. Where did that come from? Because I'm deeper and work on that.
Yeah, totally. Most people are in reaction. They don't realize that. Response is the conscious thing. So if something happens and you go, what's alive, what's happening, and you respond to that, that's how you do it consciously. Reaction is just kind of a primal, internal, emotional thing that happens that is usually not. I mean, when it comes to safety and creating safety, some reactions are good, like just being a no to something and like stopping it with loudness. Like that's a good trick for like a primal being. But for elevated conscious humans, we really want to respond more from a place of emotional integrity and self-awareness.
Yeah. Would love your thoughts. I'm going to share a really quick story, and I would love your thoughts on this.
Sure.
And I think it's going to segue it into a bigger conversation that I know you're going to have a lot to say about. I have been in a place in my life, and I'm really proud to say this. I've done a lot of work on it. I have a girlfriend in my life who's queen of this, setting boundaries.
Yeah.
Setting boundaries, not just in intimacy, in all of our relationships, clients, or setting boundaries. It has been so important. And it's something now that I teach in with my clients. I have a little bit of a framework of how I like to approach setting a boundary. And it starts with the awareness of me feeling like it's being crossed. Yeah. Right. So I understand what my boundaries are. I understand that that's feeling crossed, still desiring some level of a relationship, whatever that might be. So how do I communicate that effectively? Do you have any advice for that? I'm going to say that woman, because I would love to segue this into a bigger piece. We get the Instagram DMs, we get the stupid likes and the heart eyes and the fire emojis and all these things that women say are unwelcome, but I think they're actually really culling it in.
Yeah.
And they, right, which is the bigger
shadow side of it. I get it. Yeah. But anyway, let's hit the top level part first.
Yeah. What is that first piece for that woman who says, I don't desire this, to set that boundary? Do you have a framework for that?
Okay. In life, there's energy. And you have a finite amount of energy in the form of attention. And so if you're operating online and you're getting DMs, the best thing to do is not respond energetically to it at all, especially if it's stuff like just men being like energetically hooky with their like, they're wanting attention from a attractive feminine being. Best thing to do is just delete it. An example that I use, I mean, in my Instagram, like I get probably 15 messages a day from people that are trying to sell some sort of service or just get some attention, or even some feminine beings that are just probably trying to get my attention. And I just delete most of it. I mean, the only stuff I respond to is actual real questions that people have about their relationships or about furthering their life. Or, I mean, that's it really. And getting out of the internet space. In my life, I have insane boundaries. I'm like really tight. Basically, I'm here. I have a straight line to my wife. So there's no boundaries there. Like my wife and I are just connected all the time. But like outside of that, like very little energy can get into my space. I guard my energy like, I don't know, I have a fortress around myself. And, you know, if people send me messages or emails or whatever, I get straight to, what is this about? You know, what can I do for you is the question I'll say. Because I just don't want to chat. I don't want to get into energetic exchange with people. Also in my friendships, I have really tight friendships. So I have a couple of friends that are like deeper friends, but then I have very little people that I'm just spreading energy among. I have no friendships that are feminine beings that I spread energy with. Like any feminine person that's in my life is very transactional and very clear. And so I've really dialed in, you know, what's allowed in my space and what I'm engaged with. I you know, this idea of energetic hooks or leaky energy, I've spent years kind of looking at, okay, what are the ways I'm leaky in the world? What are the ways that there are hooks that I have with people that have been in my past? And I've cleared it all out. Because ultimately, for me to live an integral life within relationship, within business, within self, I've got to be a tight vessel of clean energy. And we get so messy, and people, you know, you mentioned the shadow thing, like women that are like posting kind of thirst trappy photos and then being like, I hate that men like comment on my stuff. It's like, okay, well then don't do that. Because there is a very primal thing that's going to happen if you post sexualized imagery on the internet. And it's naive to think that that's not going to happen, you know? And I would actually argue that most people that do that and refuse to accept the integrity piece around, you know, why am I doing that? They're doing it just to get the attention because they're, you know, feeding off of it, you know? And it's crazy. And also it's exploding the market. The whole OnlyFans thing, like the shadow side of OnlyFans is women that just want masculine attention and they can't get it in a healthy way. It's like dad wound stuff amplified times 100. And they're making money off their wound. And ultimately it's horrible for society and for the men that are engaged in it.
Here's a funny small story for you. 2 years ago, I was walking down the street and I had a couple of gentlemen come up to interview me. They had no idea who I was or what I did.
Yeah.
We were just doing interviews. I answered the question, and at the end of it, I was like, "Oh, I'm actually a business coach. Like, I do this." So I was the person to ask. They posted it on their profile. It blew up, like millions and millions of views. And if you scroll through these comments, it was like, "What's her OnlyFans? She's only successful with this." Oh, it was like, it actually took a while for me to like, it hurt, like reading those comments.
Yeah,
right?
shitty.
It's not true, but it's hurtful. Some of that stuff.
So boundaries would be you see that and you just go, fuck all those people. Like literally, like that's what you have to do. I mean, it's crazy. I'm on TikTok as well. And TikTok is like the Wild West of social media. It's pretty fucked. And so on a daily basis, I have people that are just like insulting me personally, attacking me. I just delete everything. I don't even respond because I don't want to give my energy to it. And I curate my Instagram pretty well. So if people come in with like toxic expression stuff, if I can't highlight it as a teaching in my comments, I just get rid of it because ultimately, like I'd say a good portion of humanity is just in their wounds and they're just going to come from that place. Like, oh, she's only successful because she's pretty. It's like, okay, well, fuck you. You know what I mean? Like, that's really how I look at it. And it's just envy and jealousy, and everyone can be successful if they really try and if they really want to. Not all people are capable of doing that, but that's victim stuff. If you're only successful because of this, that's them being a victim because they don't have what they perceive you have. And then as for the men that are drooling all over the comments, yeah, gross. And also that's just going to happen. It's going to happen because men are gross. Like a lot of them, they're just like, they're very basic level teenagers in grown adult bodies that are just like, I can't control my mouth and my energy.
Yeah. Wow. There's such a bigger conversation here. I'm like, we have 1 hour. I'm like,
no, we could do another one. But yeah, what's the one thing that really lit you up the most about what I just said?
I want to talk about the leaky energy.
Yeah, let's do it.
I want to talk about the leaky energy because, and I know that predominantly comes into intimacy. I think it also comes like it. Like,
no, it's business. In business, it's like mega. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are very aware of what that means. So first of all, what does it even mean to have leaky energy? Because I want to talk about this for 1 second before we get your expert advice. For me, I am so freaking aware now of how I speak to people because I know what I'm inviting in.
Exactly.
And so. Right. Even the double tap on something, right? Someone says, oh, he's just being nice. The double tap or the hard eye. Like, thank you so much. That was a nice comment. No, right? Like I'm very, very aware of that leaky energy, but especially in business, like really understanding what it is that I want. And then how is that going to be received? And what am I putting out there? So when the person heard that and they're like, leaky energy hooks, like, what does that mean? What does that mean for the person who's like, do I have leaky energy?
Yeah. So leaky energy is basically anywhere you're getting nourishment from the world that's outside of your conscious decision. So for example, let me just use relationship dynamics are the easiest way to draw this out. So I'm married, I have a wife. And so if I have relationships with any other women out there that feel good to be in relationship with, like, oh, I love the way she like validates my work, like whatever. If you're getting nourishment from that relationship, that's leaky energy. You're getting something from the feminine. Like I'm just talking about men. If men are like in relationship and they're also communicating with other women and it feels good to them to communicate there, that's like, it's basically the starting place for like emotional affairs and all that other stuff. And I get that most men think, oh, well, it won't become an affair, but it's like, if you're getting something from it, that's leaky energy. And that's a hook. The other thing that hooks, if you're like, I always say like, why would you communicate with your exes? Like if you don't have kids with an ex, why would you still be in communication with someone that you had a deep loving relationship with? And usually it's hooks. And you're trying to be validated like that you're a good person by having this string of exes you still communicate with. But it's like, no, that's actually messy, Like be integral. Don't have hooks with people from your past. Clean it up. Be like, thank you for your time. I'm moving on. Goodbye. And don't take nourishment from the world that's not consensual. How you look at the barista when you're getting coffee, the kind of energy you create when you're in a space. I'm really good at moving around space. And something I had to look at was even my joy and my humor actually can create hooks energetically, because people feel good being around me. And that was a blind spot for me a couple of years ago. I didn't realize that. And I had to actually look at, okay, I have to sort of temper my expression so that I don't accidentally create hooks with the feminine by my way of being. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. And so that's the thing. So like having responsibility over our expression so that we're not creating energetic hooks in the field and leaky energy through the communication that we're having with different people, including likes and double taps and comments on other people's stuff. Yeah, it's critically important. And in business too, like if you're a business leader and you have employees, like be really careful with how you engage with those employees, you know?
Yeah.
Like be really careful with like who you're hiring, you know? Like it's interesting. I have a couple friends that have, you know, feminine beings as their like number two in business. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I would do that. And I think I think just for the sake of cleanliness and because I have a wife and kids, like I just want to like have things easy. So I think that if I hire a director for my company, it's going to be a dude. That way I just don't have to worry about it. You know what I mean? It's like we've got super transactional, super clean. Sometimes my energy is really compassionate. Sometimes I'm a little sharp and quick. I'm from Boston, so I'm pretty like, fucking, let's get it done. And I need someone that can just take that, not emotionally, but just like, okay, yeah, got it. Let's go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot to this conversation, but ultimately it comes down to this. Leaky energy would be any energy that you're taking from the world that's nourishing you without consent or a relationship structure around it.
Yeah. So what I'm taking from this, I think you've already answered this question. Do you think that men and women can just be friends?
Not really. I mean, no, not really. I think that I kind of, you know, there's a couple of women that are in my sort of, like if let's go circles, right? So my inner circle is my wife, my kids, my family, you know, the people that are immediately around me. Then my second circle would be a bunch of men that are in men's workspaces with me and people that I communicate with frequently. And then there's kind of a ring that has some women in it that are people that I'm engaged with in a semi-business way. So there's a woman in North Carolina who's a transformational facilitator. So we communicate on stuff. I also helped her through a dating process. And then I have some older friends I'm 42. So from like the entire scope of my life that are feminine. But what I've done is I've really put up a lot of walls. And so basically what it is, it's just like, yeah, I see you. You're doing great. Yeah, awesome. Like, let me know if you need anything for your business stuff. I don't have frequent relationships or communication with women that I am like, I just don't have open relationships with women in the sense of like open communication. That's not some sort of very clear transactional arrangement. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. And I really don't. And here's the thing. Anyone that's going to say, oh, I can have a relationship with women. It's like, okay, how does that woman make you feel when you communicate with her? And if it's like, well, it feels good to be in, okay, so what are you getting out of that relationship? What was the basis? And have you slept with that person? You know what I mean? Like it doesn't take long to get into anyone that's in denial here. It doesn't take long to get into the piece where you're getting nourished by that relationship at a deeper level, you know?
Yeah. I'm imagining how many light bulbs are going off for people that are listening to this right now, and probably very triggering.
Yeah, it's super triggering. Because everyone wants to think they're doing things with integrity, but they're not. Most people are not. They're completely out of integrity, and they're denying it, you know, because they don't want to deal with the pain of sharpening their life.
Yeah.
You know.
Thoughts on dating apps?
Oh yeah. What about dating apps?
I have so many friends that are on dating apps. I have my personal opinions about it. I don't believe in them. I think it's one on the I can swipe and get the next best thing. I think that nobody spends time now riding through the roller coaster of emotions that'll come up in a relationship. The highs are highs, the lows are lows. That I'm going to see you and hold you when you're low because I know that we're all experience the high. But when it gets low and it gets hard and you're triggering me or something was uncomfortable, I'm just going to go like this and I'm going to swipe and find the next girl who's going to go out with me.
Yeah.
So I get really fired up about it.
Yeah.
I think that it's very rare now that someone will be like, ooh, you just sat me down to tell me how you were feeling about something. Let me meet you there and let me have this conversation with you. They just run away and go on to the next thing.
Yeah. Let me just say this. I do think the dating apps are useful for a lot of people that don't have time to like get out in the field, and especially in different, like you're in Austin. So you're like, there's a million people around you. You can kind of commingle and find men, you know, pretty easily. But for a lot of people in the world, that's not as simple. You know, we have these sort of life, like our life is sort of, you know, we wake up, we go to work, we come home, we feed her. Like there's not a lot of like spaciousness. And if you live in most of the country, there's not a lot of like people around to commingle with. So I do understand the value of them. I think the most important thing is if you're going to use dating apps, get off the app into a deeper way of communicating, either a phone call or a Zoom call or like a date or something like lunch, like as soon as possible. So you can start feeling the truth of the person. Because if we're just doing like chat and back and forth on like an app, it's really just too small. I actually met my wife on Tinder. It was amazing. It was the day I was getting off Tinder. It was the day she got on. I was at the end of a year of dating. And so I used dating apps, but I also used, you know, I'm in New Orleans, so I like met people in person. I kind of met people through different places. They're gonna be here for good. Like we're in the moment of dating apps are here forever, and they're evolving. Some of them are trying to create more consciousness around them. There's also matchmakers. There's other ways to date. But yeah, apps are challenging because it's too easy to disregard the potential of depths in front of you because we're not actually feeling the depth of the person in front of us. We're just chatting in like the smallest kind of way. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm also hearing you say a lot about a small circle, which is something that I've cultivated over the last couple of years in my life.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
People ask left, right, and center, like, let's go get coffee, let's do this, let's do that. And I'm like, what's the intention? Like, do you want coaching? What's the intention there?
Yeah.
Because I've created a very intentional circle of these are the people I will go to for certain things that know me and know my life and know my heart. And outside of that, it's like, well, why?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, like my wife has a small circle of women that are all mothers that have the same age bracket of children. And so like that's her tight little group. And they kind of just like work through all the life things together. It's like a text thread with like 7 of them. And she also has a wider circle of 300 people that she leads that's like holistic health and well-being and mothering from that place of holistic motherhood. So those are her kind of 2 circles. But then she also has her family circle, which is her mom, her sister, her brother, me, like our families. And so, that's one thing. For me, my circles are just basically like my family. And then I have a couple good men. And then that's it. Like, that's really it. And because it's energetic. So it's like there is a finite amount of attention and energy that we can expend at any given time. And I don't want big circles. Like, I shut things down pretty quickly when people reach out to me because I just go, yeah, what is this for? What can I do for you? And it's really helpful. Like, I don't need to deal in the weird gray space of people constantly trying to reach their hands into my attention or my space.
Yeah, getting very clear is one of the things that I'm hearing you say right from the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever it looks like for you, right? Which I think is a good segue into one of the questions about in business.
Yeah.
We are constantly going to networking events. We're constantly going to conferences. We're constantly trying to meet new people to expand more opportunities. As a woman, when I go into these types of events, especially business spaces that are then predominantly men, right?
Yeah.
How do I want to ask this or word this? I'm very aware. I can tell from body language, eye contact, too long. The way he puts his hand on my arm, from all of it, I can tell right away. And I'm very good at setting boundaries and what my intentions are. How does that? Maybe it's not woman, maybe it's man as well. But we want to go to these opportunities and we want to build relationships because we want them to give us opportunities and expand our businesses. But we need to be very clear on our expectations and what we will and what we will not receive. What comes up for you as I start to talk about this?
Yeah, I mean, it really just comes down to really sharp clarity on exactly what you're trying to do, like exactly what kind of connections you're looking for. I mean, it's almost like you need to go in there knowing like, I need a director of sales and I'm going to find that person today. Or like, I need to find somebody that I can like interview for my podcast. I mean, the thing about networking, I actually think networking events by and large are just like sort of circle jerks of people being like, look at me and my ego, look at me and my ego. And it's like, okay, fuck off. Like, I just want to find people that I can effectively expand the world with. And it's like, most of these people aren't capable of it. Business leaders are the same as humans. 80% are not worth your time. Like the remaining 20%, some of them are confused and some of them are tight. And the majority of people who are actually on point in business aren't going to networking events. You know what I mean? They're too busy with their companies. Everybody that I know that's on point in companies, they don't do anything with networking. They're just like, okay, we're just dialed in. We're like, if they have to meet people, they hire people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So where do we find them? Where do we find them then?
I think the thing is, what are you looking for? Like, what would be something that you need in your life, in your business life, like over the next 6 months?
This season of my life, I'm getting on bigger stages. I want to expand my career. So I'm looking for bigger events and bigger stages to get on.
Yeah. So the 2 people you want to look for. So instead of the person that's like the face of the event, you want to figure out who's their director of operations, and you want to reach out and just say, hey, I have something I think I could really add to one of your events. Could I just share like a quick thing, and don't do the thing that everyone does. Like, here's my deck or here's my like stump speech. You almost got to come in and just be like, listen, I saw the event that you guys did last year. I think there's something that really like a benefit that I could bring that would really create a good, it would amplify the benefit to your people. Like if you can just go right in, that's one thing that I've been really good at in my life. When I have a need or a desire, I go for the top person. I find the next person down and I go, hey, I want in. Like, what can we do? And sometimes I'll just go for the top person. Like I'll literally reach out and just be like, hey, listen, I want to learn from you. I want to work for you. You got a job opening, And then I'll pitch some elaborate number that's extremely higher than what? And then, we'll go from there.
Shoot for the stars. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And it works. Yeah.
You're bringing in that resiliency piece of the entrepreneur, the hunger that we talked about on this show that not everybody has. One last thing that I want to talk about on that last piece there, because I have become very aware of it, and I would love for you to just give a couple of pieces for the person who isn't. Let's put it, I'm going to bring it back to relationships with this sense. When I'm with my partner and we're walking and a beautiful woman walks by and I don't feel for a fraction of a second his eyes go to her, not even for a millisecond, because he saw her from a distance and he wants me to feel secure. So he'll look the other way, or he'll grab my hand or whatever it is to make me feel secure. So there's all of these things I've become very aware in business and everything when someone's like interested in a business relationship versus not. I too long, shaky energy, they're nervous, all of these types of things. What cues around body language do you have for that person to be aware? Like, how do we start paying more attention to the nonverbals rather than just the verbals of what people are actually saying? Because your body will tell a lot more than just what they're physically.
Body language is 90% of anything. Yeah. So this is really striking at something. So this idea here where like a man and a woman are in a relationship, they're walking down a street, there's some attractive woman. Everyone's going to notice her. Like there's no denying that. And then what happens immediately after the noticing is a practice of discipline. So for men, something that I talk about is having discipline over your mind and what you do with your mind. And also this is again, like leaky energy. Like if there's an attractive woman and you see her and like you allow the extra second where you take in the beauty, that is leaky energy. And that is something that you don't have to do. When I got into this relationship, I decided to really go all in on, can I be the most conscious partner that I can be? And one of the things that I took on was, how disciplined can I get around other feminine stuff that's in my field? And so it was really interesting because I go, Whole Foods where I go for like lunch often, I'll just go grab lunch. It's right across the street from this like really high-end workout space. So there's always these women that are coming from their workouts or going to their workouts that are in these like, I don't know, the yoga clothes that exist today. They're kind of like really like hot and attractive clothing. And so one of the things that I really practiced at the beginning of my relationship was, how can I go, like, you see it, you notice it. And then as soon as it creates that sort of ping of like, oh, there's a thing, it's almost like I close my eyes and I go back to thinking about my wife in some way that's like sexually interesting. Like I just be in right fantasy. Like, don't be in leaky fantasy of some woman you don't know. Like, come back to like, and if you don't have a relationship, how can you just go, okay, thank you, world, for blessing me with a moment of beauty. I don't need it. I don't want it. I'm moving on. It's having that kind of integrity of, this is the meditation thing, right? What's my mind doing and what do I need to do? I can just let go of that thought. And it's something we get to do. We get to choose it. I talked about this like a year ago on one of my Instagram reels, and I got so much shit from men that were like, yeah, fuck you. You can't stop the impulse. And I was like, actually, you can. And I'm sorry that you don't have any faith that you have more control over your thoughts and your emotions and your awareness than that. But it's really a game of discipline. And at the end of the day, give like a little bit of like if something is like, if I'm walking down the street and a firework goes off, there's going to be a reaction in the body because you're going to go, oh shit, there's a thing. Well, that's an extreme example, but the feminine or anything that is like abnormal to the energetic sphere, it's going to cause an impulse. There's going to be an impulse. So like, I don't know. I mean, I think giving some grace to our partner, but if there's like true leakiness in our masculine partners, call it out. Like, I don't like the way you look at other women, Yeah.
Communication.
What's that? Yeah. Communication. Yeah. It's key. Cause also, men need to be made aware of it.
Right. But there's a difference between snapping and why'd you look at her? And like, hey, could I tell you something and you feel, right?
Yeah.
So that's why communication.
And that's reaction versus response right there.
Want to be respectful of your time. I have one last thing I would like to touch on because I know that there's people that this is going to help with. You have navigated through a divorce into a very beautiful, conscious, healthy, passionate, thriving relationship.
Yes.
One piece of advice that you have for that person that is in that season that is lacking the hope that it's there for them and that it exists. Yeah. What advice or guidance do you have for that person?
Well, first of all, you can absolutely find good love, good, deep love. And what I did is I after my divorce, I got really lucky and I knew what I needed to know. So after my divorce, I spent 6 months in no relationships. I just honored the grief. I worked through the emotions and the identity crisis, after the end of a 10-year relationship. And I just allowed that to move through me. And, divorces and separations or just even breakups with boyfriends, girlfriends that are significant, like you need to go through a grief that's kind of not being drowned out in like alcohol or like partying or sex. And so I spent a number of months in that space of just feeling through the emotions of it. And then I said, okay, what do I want? What am I doing with my life right now? And I was 36. I knew I wanted kids. So I was like, okay, I want to find a suitable mother for my children. And I want to find someone that I can create a conscious relationship with. And so with that awareness and some other things, I teach this stuff, how to do conscious dating. What do I want? Who am I in relationship? What do I need to clear up and like become capable of so I can be a magnet for conscious feminine? And then dating from that place. And I dated 20 women over the course of a year, only 4 of them more than one date. Those 4 I dated up to 4 weeks. And as soon as I realized this was not the mother of my children, I said, thank you for your time, moving on. And I got to the end of the year, and on the final day of being on Tinder, my wife popped up and I was like, this is great. She looks great. She's cute. Like, what's going on? And she took a risk. I had like sunglasses on in my photo. I don't remember this, but she I don't know. It's funny. So anyway, we met. I got on the phone with her and I immediately was like, this girl's energy is awesome. Like, she's alive. She's resilient. She's a yes to life. And by the time I met her, I was like, yeah. So on the day I met my wife, I knew she was my wife. And I was like, I found home in this woman, And I knew it like this was within days of actually meeting her on Tinder. Like, I just knew. And it's because I knew what I was looking for. And I worked through the process. I didn't get tired of it. There were points where I was like, when's this going to break? When am I going to meet someone? But actually, what's interesting is I got to the end of the year. I gave myself a year to date, and I was going to take 3 months off and then do it again. I was in my room playing that Supreme song, You Can't Hurry Love, the dun, 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 that song. So I was really embodying, like, I'm freeing myself from this. I was a practice of freeing myself from the need to find a love. And then I went to get off the thing and she popped up, and it's like magic. It's like the universe really doesn't work that way. I was like, yeah, you had to make me wait a fucking year, huh? But, the discerning process.
Yeah.
How much was I willing to stand aside and wait? Even in the face of beautiful people on dates, like exquisite intimacy on a couple, like how could I honor that I have a need and a desire in relationship? And the universe was basically like, okay, I'm going to give you a year of dating and you're not going to find your person. And then I'm going to see if you're still a yes to finding your love. And that's what I did. Found her.
Beautiful how God will test you like that and always give you exactly what you need it. And I think for those people that are out there that are single, that are like, I need, where's my person? And this is what they want, but they settle for this because they don't think that this exists out there. God really does test you.
Yeah.
And then
the settling thing is horrible. Yeah. Yeah. Whatever. I don't want to get into it today, but don't settle. So it's worth holding out for the right thing, and you want to find someone that really excites you, that can take you into the next moment of your life, whatever that might be.
And hold all sides of you. Maybe we'll bring your on the show.
You should. She's so funny. She always gets nervous. She's always like, yeah, I don't know. I'm like, you should join me on the thing. And she's like, I don't know. She feels like she's not good on the spot. And I'm like, my wife is literally the most intelligent, wise oracle of a woman that I've ever met in my life. She's incredible. And she just has a thing about performance. She doesn't want to be on screens, but I'll get her on here. Let's get her on.
I would love to have you guys back.
Yeah. It'd be awesome.
Ways that people can connect with you, your Instagram handle, I will put it in the show notes. Do you want to say it for those that are joining and want to just hear it?
Yeah, well, my name is Max Trombly. It's Trombly, and I'm on Instagram. And that's kind of my main thing. I'm on TikTok as well. And, my website is ashiftinbeing.com. That's the easiest way to find me, and that's kind of where I transmit from and broadcast my messaging. So Instagram is the way.
Beautiful. And you caught my attention with your beautiful words and conscious messaging. Thank you. Yeah. Really appreciate you being here. I'm sure that you're going to get a lot of DMs from this. No leaky energy.
Yeah. Oh, it's all right. I can handle it.
Yeah.
I got good walls.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you being here, and I'm looking forward to watching your journey.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to be here, and thanks for having me.